Leaders aren't leaders because of their titles. Leaders are leaders because people choose to follow them, right?
Right.
When the person at the front changes, people naturally get nervous. Morale dips, loyalty wavers.
When people are really being obsessive about getting a title, it's usually a good sign that they're probably not a leader. I think you'll get a lot of grace when everybody's like, oh, this guy's here to learn too. He doesn't know everything out of the gate.
Welcome to the $100 Million Mindset, the source for business owners who aspire to scale, grow, and reach their full potential. Whether you're aiming for 5 million, 10 million, or 100 million. Your hosts are Alan O'Neill, the Irish plumber, who scaled Abacus Plumbing and Cooling to over 100 million, and Two Lattes, Todd Liles, a coach to high-performing business leaders and the owner of Service Excellence, are going to help you think bigger, act smarter, and take your business to the next level.
Welcome back to the $100 Million Mindset with myself, Todd Liles, and my good friend, Alan O'Neill. Alan, we are doing part 3 of 4 today in terms of helping leaders with critical skills that they need. And Alan, today, the thing that we're talking about is what happens during leadership change, how to lead through that transition. So I'm really excited about this one.
It's a great topic, Todd.
Yeah, and it's one also that I know can make a lot of people sort of fearful. But today we're going to unpack it because this is one of the most fragile moments inside of a company. It's leadership change. Whether the leadership is changing because of retirement or growth or maybe a sudden transition, what we know is that at the moment of leadership change, culture is at risk. And in this episode, Alan and I are going to show you how to protect your trust and how to keep your team strong when you have leadership shifts.
Whatever the reason, Todd, culture is at risk. Because here's the truth. Leaders aren't leaders because of their titles. Leaders are leaders because people choose to follow them, right? And when the person at the front changes, people naturally get nervous. Morale dips, loyalty wavers. And that's why leadership transitions have to be handled carefully. It's not just a matter of moving a title from one desk to another. It's about protecting trust and culture in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And in segment 1 here, Alan, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about why change in leadership can feel so incredibly risky. And I'm going to go to one of my favorite quotes from Charles Duhigg, which, by the way, anything he writes is worth reading. And in his book, The Power of Habit, he says that culture is just organizational habits at scale. Now, he's using that word habits to also mean essentially core values. So culture is organizational habits at scale. And when a leader changes those habits or those core values, they feel like they're at risk. And here are some things that I know that goes through the mind of a team member when one of their leaders leaves. One is, will things stay the same? Specifically, they're saying, will they stay the same for me?
Right.
What about my job? Is it safe? Like, I was really close with that guy, right? I might have even engaged in a little bit of gossip with that guy. And will the new leader understand me? So these are the things that are going through people's minds. And here's the mistake that an owner can make. They can think that just because they announce the change and let's just move on, that everything's okay. But that's not the case, because when you don't settle the fears and anxieties of people through leadership change, then that's when you start getting rumors. That's when you start having silence that kills trust. It's just not good.
Exactly, Todd. And one of my favorite leadership gurus, John Maxwell, put it best. He said, people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. And if they don't buy into the leader, no strategy will stick. So that's why leadership change is risky, Todd, because culture is built on trust, not titles.
You know, and I love that quote, Alan. And it's one of the things that I think about a lot. When people are really being obsessive about getting a title, it's usually a good sign that they're probably not a leader. Because I think most leaders I don't care what's on my business card.
Right.
They know that they're there to influence people, and that whatever the name on that card isn't going to create influence. People that have been in the military know this exactly, where there are certain leaders that graduated from, officer school, so they're considered a leader, and technically they are, but they're not very good leaders. The best leaders are still those sergeants that are right there in the field with them. Alan, we're going to talk about one of the toughest times in a company. which is when a leader leaves an organization. And I think what might actually serve as really relevant was when you left Abacus,
Right.
right? And if we take a look at that moment, I know that for the people that have been there for a long time, there's probably a million things that are going on in their mind, and they're probably slightly fearful, I guess. So, what was it like when you announced that you were going to be stepping down and Tony was going to be stepping up?
Yeah, I think, Todd, it was a bit of a shock to some people, to a lot of people maybe. But at the same time, they knew my wish was to spend less time in the office and more time with my family. So
Hmm.
they kind of knew it was coming, but I think when it came, it was still a shock to people. But a couple of things we did that I think made that transition a lot more palatable to the staff. So the first thing we did was I appointed Tony president 18 months before I stopped working full time.
Sure.
So I was there. Number one, I was there to help Tony. Number two, I was there to help the staff through the transition. So the good thing about that is I was there. The bad thing about that is I was there. So people still, would tend, especially the old timers, would tend to come around Tony to me. And of course, I would send them down the hall to Tony. So that was helpful, I think, that I was there. Um, you know, I also was able to, on a weekly basis, during staff meetings with the technicians, able to convince them that, hey, things are going to stay the same. Now, any change that came around during that period, of course, it was, oh, we're losing our value. The usual story. They think things are changing for the worse, but in reality, I was there for long enough, full time, every day, for them to see that the transition to Tony was going to be painless for them. And so I think we did it really well. I think they were able to see, like, Alan trusts Tony. Tony is not dishonoring Alan. He's not trying to change a bunch of stuff. He's just taking the wheel and
Yeah.
going.
18 months is a really long time to give people, adjustment.
Yeah.
I think that speaks to your character. It speaks to the company at large, right? Not everyone's going to get 18 months,
No,
right?
no.
But it's good that you guys did that. So let's talk about what occurs in an organization. And first of all, I think what you did is a perfect example. When you know someone is going to be leaving, and for your case, it's because you wanted personal time.
Mhm.
But when we can see far enough down the road, and I think retirement's a great example of that, where we have significant time. 18 months is a lot of time. But, I think really 3 months is fairly significant time.
Yeah.
90 days is probably enough. Then I think the thing that we can do is just begin to do all those things that you said early. So when I was preparing the show notes, that's not one of the notes that I had in here. So I'm thankful that you brought that to the table because it's really great. So let's talk about some of the things that I'm sure was done. In your case, I'm absolutely positive that your contributions to the company were honored. And I know this beyond a shadow of a doubt because I've been at your Austin location. And while you were gone in Ireland, they put up this awesome mural that represents Austin with all these different graphics, and it's got Abacus tied into it. And then you're at the top. You didn't even notice that you were at the top at
I
first,
didn't
right?
even know I was going to be in the mural. My wife actually noticed me in the mural before I did, which is interesting. But no, I think Tony has done a great job at honoring the legacy I built,
I do
and
too.
I go to all employee meetings still, and Tony will say, here's a word from our founder, Alan O'Neill, the man that made all this possible, honors me every chance he gets, which is great, and helps stroke my ego a little bit. And because when I go home, I know I'm not the boss. But no, it's great to see that, Todd. And I think that helps build Tony's credibility with the staff, who
Yep.
would hate to see, I think, me being dishonored, because there's so much loyalty to me built up over the years.
Absolutely. So number one, I'd say you honor the contribution. And here's something before we go to the second point, Alan, that I know may be odd for people. Sometimes people don't actually leave in the best way. and yet we can still honor the good things that they did.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I think what that says to the people around us is that it says that as a company, we realize that people are more than just revenue producers or serving a position, that they're humans, and the work that they did while they was here was appreciated.
Well, I've had that happen, Todd, in my company too. And the 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 way I always handle that is if you don't tell them as close as you possibly can to the truth about what happened, they're going to make up their own story,
That's right.
which is usually so far off in left field, it's not helpful at all. So I will say as much as I possibly can about the circumstances without throwing the gentleman that left under the bus.
100%.
But we get it out there and we say, hey, Johnny's no longer here. Here's what happened as much as we can. And then say, listen, Johnny did a lot of great stuff while he was here. Unfortunately, he made some bad decisions that were not in the best interest of the business. And,
Right.
and we're moving on. But I think just getting it out there from the leader helps significantly with the guys. Now, you'll still get the old timers will come up and say, so what really happened?
Yeah, exactly.
But you stick with your story and you go from there. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you're talking about is addressing the elephant in the room that everybody knows is there.
Absolutely.
They know
Yeah.
it's there.
They do.
They absolutely do. And I think people are really smart, right? They can hear what you're saying and then also understand there's more to the story that you can't talk about for sometimes it's just flat out legal reasons. You can't talk
Absolutely.
about the
Yeah,
reason why
yeah.
people left, right?
Yeah.
So we're certainly not here to give, human resource advice. We're here to give leadership advice. I'd always say, check with your HR, check with your lawyer before you get up and talk about why someone left to make sure you're, checking the boxes there. But you got to address the elephant in the room because, listen, if you don't address it in the room, they're addressing it out there by the dumpster.
You have to say something, Todd, right? And also sometimes there's a lesson to be learned there, right? This is what happened. We don't need you to do this, right?
Yeah.
This is a clear violation of our core values, and we can't live with it.
So let's talk about the other, because that's when someone leaves and they just suddenly quit.
Mhm.
And maybe they don't quit. Maybe they pass away. But the bottom line is they left in not the ideal way.
Yes.
But then there's the other way. It's where it's your way. You left with 18 months where we're actually bringing someone in intentionally, right? An old leader is leaving, but in your case, you weren't going automatically. So you had the opportunity to not only transfer the title to Tony, but you had the opportunity to start transferring your trust that you had with your people to him.
Absolutely.
So what were some of the key things that you did to transfer that trust over to Tony?
Well, I think, Todd, one of the reasons it was a successful transition was Tony was somewhat of a known quantity because he was in the company already. We weren't bringing in a leader from outside.
How long
right?
was he there for?
So he was there for about 5 years
Okay.
before,
Yeah.
in a leadership position. He came in as the operations manager for plumbing, eventually took over operations management of the electrical department also, and then became sort of the VP of operations for the entire company. So in in 3 different senior leadership positions, oversaw the complete transition to Service Titan when we moved to Service Titan. So he had his hands in a lot of jars and people were used to working with him, liked him and trusted him. That helped significantly.
Big time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, when it's a known quantity, it's definitely easier than bringing in somebody from the outside. If you are bringing in somebody from the outside, then they're going to have zero trust coming in the door.
Right.
So you have to build that trust and make sure you spend time. And a lot of times you'll help build trust in the new person by publicly stating this person was the right man or woman for the job, and I have every confidence they're going to do a great job. And here's their background. They worked at so-and-so, so-and-so, and
You really build them up.
And build them up. Absolutely.
That's great, Alan. So I think you said it well, right? We honor their contribution. We address the elephant in the room. We transfer trust, not just the title. And when we do this and when we do this well, people aren't going to feel abandoned when a new leader steps in. They're going to feel very anchored, and they're going to know that this builds the foundation for everything that's coming next down the line.
Correct.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to help a new leader coming in be as successful as possible. And Alan, you've already begun to breach the conversation. You've added some great things here, talking about building Tony up, and I think that's great. We're going to add a little bit more layers to the conversation. So one of the things that I want to talk about is one of Michael Hyatt's concepts, which he refers to as a listening tour. So if you're a new leader, this next section is for you. So what Michael Hyatt refers to by a listening tour is in the first 60, 90 days, as a leader, one of the things that you should do is just start by listening. Now, in Tony's scenario that you described earlier, this is a little bit different because he's been there for 5 years. But if you're brand new stepping into an organization and you know no one and you immediately start trying to change everything, chances are you're going to build up a lot of resentment and a lot of hate. And this might be difficult for a lot of organizations to accept, but the idea of taking 60 to 90 days to really absorb, really listen, really understand so that you are building trust by going first is actually really smart. Even if it doesn't big action takes place in the first 69 days. The first 69 days is just about building trust. So that's Michael's point. And I actually think that he's spot on. And interestingly enough, with Aaron, that is the new leader at Abacus in Austin, I went and saw him last Friday, and I said, "Hey, tell me about your first 100 days." And he said to me, my first 90 days was mostly about listening and getting to know people and building trust. And I went, good man.
Perfect. Yeah.
Good man.
Absolutely. Todd, it's also a time, that first 60 to 90 days, when new leaders are very capable of shooting themselves in the foot, right? So I can tell you about a leader we had, and I won't mention any names, but I was getting reports back from the technicians that, hey, when you're not here, he's different and he's a bit of a bully. I didn't see that in him. And so we were at a plumber meeting one Thursday morning. I'll never forget it. And I was standing down the back of the room and he was speaking, and we were having a problem with guys answering their phone. They weren't answering their phone. Some of the guys weren't answering their phone. So this gentleman says, guys, there's something I need to talk about. He said, you're going about your day. And I just knew by the way he started the story, it was going to be sort of a smart aleck story, like just not great. And he said, you're going about your day and you have a black box on your hip, referring to their phone. And he said, that black box makes noise and you look at it and you choose to ignore it. Well, what we need you to do, we need you to pick it up. There's a green button on it. You press the green button and you say hello. Now, all he had to say was, guys, we're having a problem with you answering your phone. Please answer your phone. The room went flat, totally flat. And so he completely lost the room. And after the meeting, before I could get from the meeting room to my office, 3 or 4 guys came and said, did you hear that? Did you hear what he did in there? He put us all down, and there was complaint. So I took him in and I said, hey, listen, that little speech you gave about them answering the phone? It was terrible, absolutely terrible. You degraded every single employee in the room. You made them feel like 4-year-old children. Like, that's not on. That's not how we treat people here. And, the way he responded to that told me a lot about the individual. Was he didn't even see he did anything wrong,
right.
And so I learned a lot about that particular leader that day, that, he needed a lot of coaching to get to our level of culture. But it's funny, like, statements like that and putting people down and being a smart ass, excuse the language, but like just being a smart aleck and not being, not showing any sort of empathy or, trust with the people is very damaging, especially in that first 90 days. Yeah.
Sarcasm is dangerous.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. If people don't know you and they don't deeply know you, they don't get that sarcasm is an attempt at humor. By the way, I'm not a big fan of sarcasm.
I think sarcasm, Todd, is okay if people know, like, and trust you.
Sure.
Right? Because, I mean, I could probably be sarcastic to you.
It wouldn't bother me.
It wouldn't bother you. And you could be sarcastic to me. It wouldn't bother. We'd probably laugh about it. But if I'm meeting someone for the first time and I'm sarcastic, or I'm trying to build, an impression with that person, being being sarcastic is not going to work.
I think it's this. I think it's the stage you're on, where every player has a stage. If you're a comedian, I think you expect that to an extent.
Oh,
Oh, he's a
absolutely.
comedian.
Yeah.
But if you're the manager and you're leading people and you kick it off with that, you might even be able to bring that in 15, 20 minutes after there's been a couple laughs,
Hmm.
and then so your sarcasm is less sarcasm, and it's more like it's an analogy there. There is this black box on your hip that you could use to answer
Exactly.
the phone call.
Yeah.
But if your tone is going in it like I'm just belittling you like you're a child,
It doesn't work.
it's not
Yeah.
going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of that, we need to honor what works, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Charles Duhigg reminds us again that culture is basically just habits. And habits is another way of saying, what are our core values? So don't rip your traditions out. Alan has a tradition of deeply respecting people. You tell funny stories. I can remember Colin saying you told this story about going to the bathroom in an airplane. He didn't know where it was going, but you were totally in. He wanted to know what that story was. So you don't come in and rip out your old habits to install your new ones. You want to honor that. You want to communicate very early and very often about what this new leadership position is to you and why it's important to you. As Simon Sinek says, you want to start with why. So you want to build transparency in all things as a new leader. And look, as a new leader, I think it's totally okay to say, I'm so excited to be here. I'm new on this team. I look forward to getting to understand the culture and building upon it. And I think I've got a good grasp, but I'm going to know it a lot better 60 to 90 days from now. I think you'll get a lot of grace when everybody's like, oh, this guy's here to learn too. He doesn't know everything out of the gate.
Hmm.
Very cool. And then John Maxwell, one of our favorites, says there's a law of the inner circle, which means you got to choose the closest people to you very carefully, right? As you pick Tony, you know why you picked Tony. And when you're a new leader and you're coming in, you got to be really careful who you make part of your inner circle, because Alan, I've seen this. New leaders come into an organization, and oftentimes the really good people are sitting over here being quiet, waiting to see what you're going to do. And the people that aren't the best will immediately flock to the new leader and try to win them over.
Hmm.
And new leaders just going, oh, these people are just nice to me. I'm going to start listening to them. And what they're actually doing is they're poisoning you with tons of really false information, which goes back to the power of what I think that you did with Tony, which was you were there with Tony. And even if Tony hadn't been there for 5 years, if you had hand selected him and he had 18 months, you probably would have went like, hey, Tony, those people that are trying to win your favor, actually, we're considering them not being on the team.
Yeah, well, I mean, in several cases, Tony came in and said to me, hey, that John Smith is a really nice guy. And I was like, okay, just tell me what happened, because you got to be careful. Yeah,
So when I said that, it was ringing a bell.
Yeah, no, it's definitely ringing a bell. But I think, Todd, like, all credit to the Wrench Group, our private equity partners. They allowed me to continue with my regional CEO role and move the president's duties of Abacus over to Tony. So I was functioning as the regional guy based in Houston, in the same office as Tony, able to watch what was going on, help Tony, advise Tony, and it was a great transition. I do understand that everybody has that luxury, but I do think having a period of time where you can observe and help is definitely a good idea.
Well, you're naturally bringing up the very next segment, which is, what does the new leader need from the owner? And you're the absolute perfect person to talk about that. And if you want to use the Tony example or anyone else, that would be fine.
Yeah, so here's where owners stumble, Todd. You don't just install a leader and walk away. You've got to equip them to succeed, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So public endorsement, say it out loud. I trust this guy. I trust this lady. Support them. If the owner hesitates, the team will naturally hesitate. Private support, you've got to give that leader a safe space to process mistakes without losing credibility. Client expectation, Hyatt's framework, vision, alignment, execution. And then space to lead. Once you've placed them, let them lead. Back them privately, endorse them publicly.
That's great, Alan. And I think the point of what you're really bringing home here for me is that when ownership and leadership are aligned, then the culture gets stronger.
Absolutely.
And when the culture is strong, then it doesn't fracture. And if it doesn't fracture, the company's ready to grow.
Correct.
All right, Alan, we have shared our third of 4 lessons that we're going to share. And today's about leadership transition change. So I'm going to give the listeners here a challenge. And it's the following. If you're listening to this at a moment where you're facing leadership challenge, here's the questions that I want you to ask yourself. Number 1, have we honored the past? Number 2, are we prepared for the present? And number 3, have we clarified the future? Because if you have, then your culture is going to be fine. If not, it's going to be your first casualty.
Todd, can I just say one thing before we move away from that? So, there are situations where new leadership comes in and it's all very sudden. Anything from the old leader passed away to the old leader, left for some reason. It could be any one of a multitude of reasons. But if it's a transition that's a succession plan, you should prepare and plan for that 1 to 2 years out, I believe. Start to think about it. How's it going to look? How's it going to work? Who's the person going to be? If you have a couple of people in mind to be that leader, start evaluating and deciding on who that's going to be. Because if you can plan and prepare, it's always better to plan and prepare and just know who it is, know where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how you're going to equip them to succeed. And even sort of make it public that there's going to be a transition and, let the people know that change is coming. And I think that helps significantly.
It makes me, I'm going to give a shout out to Nick Martin. And did you know Steve and Donna Huff, Steve Huff's Plumbing?
I do, yeah.
They're great people.
Yes.
They were with us for a long, long time before they sold off to Nick. And that was part of what their future plan was. They just adored Nick and treated Nick almost like a son. And they started succession planning for probably 2 years. And then they ended up having Nick be the owner. So Nick purchased the company from them. And I want to think under Nick's leadership, they've probably grown 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and Nick's still with us. We're still working with him day to day. And then we had Majestic Air, Jan, I cannot think of her last name right now. She came in, her and her husband, probably 2 years ago, maybe even 3 at this point. And we just went to the whiteboard and started talking about the future and mapped it out and whether it was going to be a succession plan or whether they were going to exit. And when it was all said and done, for them, they knew because they didn't have all their succession planning in place, the best move was to exit. And they happened to be near the same area as Nick. So we got them successfully hooked up with Nick. They exited with Nick.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So Nick's doing a great job. And he has, I don't want to make this at the very end all about Nick, but he's gone through, so much. Transitioned the company from Steve and Donna, did a great job there. Then lost his wife to COVID.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. They had a little boy. And navigated through all those hardships. Now he's remarried and he's grown a successful company. And, I got to give Steve and Donna just massive amount of credit for the amount of investment that they put into Nick. So,
That's
I didn't know
the
if you
key.
knew that.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's news to me. Yeah.
So whether you are thinking about future retirement or succession planning, whatever the case may be, there's going to come a point in time where if you're listening to this and you are the leader, you're going to have to transition through a leadership plan. And if you're prepared for that, fantastic, that's great. But if you're not, then all you got to do is send an email to todd@toddliles.com and you can address it to myself or you can address it to Alan and we'll be happy to help you.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks so much for watching the show this week. Head over to toddliles.com/mindset to get the show notes. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you never miss a new episode of the show. And if you enjoyed this episode, then share it. It really helps us get the word out. You've been watching the $100 Million Mindset with Alan O'Neill and tight-lipped Todd Liles.